Boom, boom. Welcome to K11 Konversations, a multi-platform dialogue series discussing the intersection between creativity, culture, and innovation, in line with K11's social mission to incubate talent and push the new frontier of art. My name is Max Moore. I'm the head of Sotheby's Contemporary Art Auctions in Asia and the co-head of Sotheby's NFT department worldwide. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, a friend, and internationally renowned DJ and digital artist, Don Diablo, to discuss his work with Hexaverse, a third collaboration with Sotheby's, and a first with K11 Hong Kong and Shanghai. Welcome, Don.
Good to be here. Good morning, good afternoon,
Good
good
morning.
evening, wherever you
Good
are in the world
afternoon,
right
good
now.
evening. Exactly. How are you? How are you? So, I thought we would begin just because our story started, I guess, over a year ago when the NFT craze started. But I think what drew me first to you was in our first conversation was a little bit of your background. I think it's kind of important to share that with the audience. I'm sure a lot of our listeners know you as, the famous electronic DJ, given your kind of celebrity status in that realm. And today we're going to be discussing how it all finds a place within the digital art world. But I think it starts kind of with your background. So it'd be great to hear a little bit about that.
Background is diverse. Well, it's funny actually. I started out as a video maker. When I was a kid, I went to film school and then actually ended up studying audiovisual journalism. Finished a degree in that, and then I think I've always just been fascinated in creating. So I started out making film, and I was like, I need music for the film. And then I was always making props for the background. So I was making physical things. So kind of just doing everything, I guess. But at that time, they were like, you need to make a decision. Either you go into film, you go into art, or you go into music. I guess music seems easiest because, you can do it all by yourself. I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to be in a band because I really wanted to do music, but there was no one around. I grew up in a very small village in the east of the Netherlands, very near the German border, in the middle of nowhere, basically. So there was no one there to form a band with me. So I'm like, how am I going to make music? And I discovered you can do all of that with your computer. So
One
that
man,
was a
one man
revolution to me, right? Yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I think I then became best friends with my computer, and then I found out like you can do so much with a computer. And that's, I guess, when most of my youth I was locked up. I think my usually just 18 or 19 hours a day, skipping school, and my parents were kind of worried. They were like, what is he doing up there? But I was just sort of I guess obsessed with creating, whether it was video or music or anything else. That was most of my youth, just creating inside. And I think at one point I had a hair, and my hair was like literally down here. It was that
Yeah.
long.
So you were
And
solo with the hair, long hair, with the computer, just creating
yeah,
music, video, everything, everything.
yeah.
And when did you end up leaving Amsterdam, or what was kind of like the impetus for this? What was kind of that moment in your career where you started to realize that this was the future for you?
I think I was 13 when I put out my first record. That became very addictive. So I started ghost producing for other artists, basically making music for them, and they would put their name to it. And they
Yeah.
put me in a studio somewhere, and I just kind of just working all day and then going into school in between. Um, but then I think when I was 16, I had a record that did really well in the UK, and they started asking me if I would be interested in going out to perform. I was like, how do you do that? um Kind of just figured
I
everything
don't
out
know.
on the go. I never
Amazing.
wanted to be a DJ or a producer. That to me was just like a, okay, cool, I'll just try that. I think that's kind of what life is about, right? It can kind of just decides
Absolutely.
for you, right?
No, for
I don't
sure.
know
I
if you
mean, no, go ahead.
did you was this your plan, like where you are right now?
No, no, no. I was studying medicine in university, and then started at
Medicine, I
Sotheby's.
mean.
Yeah, boom. So we come from all different walks of life to where we actually end up in life, which is quite interesting. But I think, you know, it is actually interesting what you said. At that time, you had to choose between one category, whether it was music, video, art, because it was so kind of, I wouldn't say society, but because there was so much kind of boundaries created within these individual genres or artistic preferences. And obviously you chose music, but fast forward to today, or at least a few years ago, and you're really starting to explore this multidisciplinary activities, which I think is quite interesting. And that's kind of what brought us into conversation at the beginning. So
I think you're right. Like I think I never actually chose a specific discipline, but I think the
right,
world chose it, right, for me.
music for you, right?
Uh, I think because I've always been directing music videos. I've always been making art, whether it's for my for music sleeves or whatever it is. I've always been creating all of these things: physical pieces, digital pieces, music, sound designs. I think the only thing was you would only get acknowledged for one thing, and the other thing would just be people wouldn't know where it came from. They didn't know who actually would have made that piece of video or that piece of art or that physical piece in the background.
It's very
Now,
absolutely.
yeah, right. I think now when we met each other, um, times have changed, and the way people envision art and what art can be. You can be a multidisciplinary artist now and be seen as that. I think before it was like you're A, B, or C. Now a
Absolutely.
time cometh where people like my friends are now all of a sudden big contemporary artists. Like I remember making a piece with Mike with Beeple 3 years ago, just to put it up on our Instagram, right? So fast forward to now, I think we all know what happened, but a lot of my friends from
Absolutely.
back then were just putting out stuff that wasn't placed within the world of art, now are some of the biggest contemporary artists among us.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's definitely, it's not welcoming to every artist. There still needs to be a level of sophistication to the artwork that's being kind of put out. But I think the art world in general, with being in an auction house, it is quite elitist at times in terms of who we're selling and also who the buyers are. And then with this NFT kind of breakthrough, it's a real kind of turning the art world on its head in many ways and introducing a new dialogue, new buyers, new sellers, new artists to the fold. And I think that that's quite interesting, kind of that development that we've seen at the auction house, including artists for the first time, and they're not on that trajectory of every artist in the past 50 years, where you have to go to a graduate program, this specific graduate program, start with this specific gallery, and continue to grow through that. I think we're up kind of ending that stagnant tradition and really allowing kind of the voice of art to kind of speak through these new artists and creators such as yourself. So I was very,
Absolutely.
very happy to be kind of put in a conversation with you that first time, because I think we instantly, hit it off. We discussed, it was Infinite Future at the time, which was then featured in our first Sotheby's natively digital auction in June of 2021. Achieved almost $1 million price point, which is fantastic, building on your super rare profile and records already. And maybe just speak a little bit about that as kind of a phygital kind of work, kind of how you define that, what the inspiration was, and then we can walk through Hexhibit and then finally Hexaverse.
Yeah, I think for me coming in, it was important to have my own space, right? Especially coming from music. Um, some people were like, "Oh, but it's easy for you because you're on Diablo, you're at a certain point in your life, people will buy your art." It's like people who have bought the art are not necessarily aware of my career within music. I
Right.
think this was a level playing field, new people coming in. I think if you were there early last year, like you were seen as a pioneer. Crazy enough,
Absolutely.
like I think every month they kind of accounted for a full year. Um, And I think for me, it was like it was an opportunity. I was at home for about 2 years, I guess, during a
Right.
pandemic. I think by that time, a full year. And I was already working on all of these pieces without actually thinking about like, I'm going to create an NFT. I think, you should never think that way. You're just making art, right? The way you kind
Did you
of,
even know what an NFT was when you were making these pieces for the first time? Like, was that name in your mind? Okay, yeah.
yeah, I knew what it was, obviously. I've been working on my own currency, actually, my own coin back in 2018, I think.
Right. Exactly.
But for me, everything was too financially driven. For me, I'm more of a, I like to create things. I like to create art versus actually, trying to make money, I guess. Uh,
Right.
I think now these two things go hand in hand because, people, they want to value something at a certain price point. But for me, it was more about like, hey, I now have an opportunity to do something that I've been working towards my whole life. And it's bring all of these things together to make pieces that are both digital, physical, audio, video, plus something bigger, a thought, right? So for me, um, I wanted to be the guy that came into the space creating these crazy physical pieces, which actually has nothing to do with my music, funnily enough.
Right.
But yeah, I really wanted to bring that into the game where everybody was just making purely digital pieces. So I think that's kind of how I rolled into the whole thing with my first piece, I think at Super Rare, which was a hologram cabinet. From there on, we took it further. We took it to the hologram cabinet with a lifelong curation at home. And
Yep.
from there, we went to creating, I guess, I guess for me, it's also a little bit of a way to create my own voice within the artistic NFT space, where people are like, well, it's something digital, it's something you put on your phone, like it's in a digital wallet. What do I do with it? So I was like, okay, I want to create something that you can put in your home, or even from there, when we did exhibit, I was like, let's create something you can actually walk into. You can walk into the
Right.
NFT and really experience it, not just look at it
Yeah.
on your phone, but actually like you're like walking into this behemoth, as you call it. And you're standing there, you're being, the floor is shaking, there's lights all around you, there's visuals all around you, and you're literally in the middle of an experience that happens to be an NFT. I think what an NFT is, it's just digital token on the blockchain. So it could literally be anything. So I was like, I want to hit the ground running. I want to I made a film, a 1 hour film that I sold to one person. Um, and to me, part of the art wasn't just creating the film, was also actually the fact that no one is going to get to see the film, and that there is a film out there 1 hour, versus what is the actual value of creation these days, right? Music, films, TV shows, art, everything is kind of accessible for free. You can look it up on the internet, or you can stream it or download it. I guess people have lost the actual value of a lot of things out there, especially pop culture. So for me, it was like I really wanted to show the world that the things that we do, especially with a certain history, me from, I've been creating from the age 13. Um, that actually takes time. It's, as you said, it's different from the traditional way of thinking of art, but this is also something that that has been in the works for about 30 years, the school of life versus school of arts. And I think the perception of art has shifted. It can actually, be someone that creates all facets, digital, physical, as well as audio, instead of different people working on creating
Right.
something that all comes together. It can actually be one person, and that is the actual piece of art. And
That's
I
the
think
finish.
that really sort of blew my mind and just kind of just opened all doors for me around the globe. And that's really, really changed my life.
No, no, absolutely. And I think, the acceptance of that, again, when you were growing up, it was kind of forced upon you, those categories, and you chose music because, that you just alluded to, or just gravitated towards at the time. And now you're kind of being able to capture, or not just now, it's been your entire life, but now you're finally able to kind of put out some of the process, the work behind it, and be recognized for it. So yeah, with Infinite Future, it was one of the only physical pieces. Actually, it was the physical piece. There was another piece that had a physical element to it, but within the whole, series, the whole auction, I thought that was interesting because everyone at the time was very excited about the digital, but the main question that would come was, what do you do with that NFT, that purely digital format? And you had kind of had a perfect answer to it. And what I really liked about it, as you mentioned, is that infinite curation, in that you can have that dialogue with a collector in perpetuity, which is quite interesting. As a painter with that physical object, once it leaves the studio, still the message is portrayed through the canvas, but there's no sort of ongoing dialogue that can happen. And you kind of have reimagined the relationship between creator and consumer in a quite beautiful way in both Infinite Future and Exhibit. So, and Exhibit, I mean, that was a fantastic one because we got it exhibited in the MoCA Amsterdam, which you have this
Actually, and it was
validation
premiered on the museum
and the
square,
museum.
right
Exactly.
opposite of the Rijksmuseum, which was like,
that's fantastic. I mean,
yeah,
you're getting this, not just the inclusion at Sotheby's, because that's something I can help. That's like kind of a really big step for kind of art world acceptance, if you will. And I think that's like a really, and that in addition to, I think you just had the show at the Biennale,
yeah,
in collaboration with Pace Gallery, another great accolade for you. Maybe you want to talk about that briefly?
yeah. I've had a series of collaborations with a Dutch duo called Drift, friends of mine. um, and they, I guess it started at Art Basel in Miami, which was kind of crazy because literally we're like in the main booth at Pace Gallery, in between a Terrell and a Picasso. It was like, I think we sold in a few minutes. And even Pace Gallery was kind of like mind blown with what happened there. Like how
This was
things,
December 2021, right? This was at
yeah,
the end of 2021. Yeah,
yeah,
in Miami.
correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, I think sometimes you're already here and the rest of the world's still here. You're like, I like to go fast. I like to go hard. I
Oh,
like
no,
to
I know.
go, like, and I like to do it all at once. I think from there, we there was kind of a natural artistic friendship that developed, and we did another piece at Art Dubai. After that,
Yep.
we made a film, and then we did something completely different. We flew an indoor, I guess it was world's first indoor drone show in Venice,
Yeah,
um,
that's the
where
video. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but it looked really fantastic. The
it's
collaboration,
it's where one of those things where you're like, you do it on
all of it.
paper and then you're there. it's
Yeah.
it's I had like, I was in this space where Vivaldi used to rehearse. We had everyone there, from the MoMA to the Met to I guess all of the Tate, like all of the big players were there. It was a very special moment. And I think that's also sometimes that art is, you can't grasp it. It's a moment, right? Something you experience. Sometimes it's something physical, something digital, sometimes it's an experience. And I love just exploring all of the different things that you can do with the human mind, with inspiration, and I guess what exactly art is. I think there we stretch it up a little bit more, and I think that's going to be my goal, to just find ways to stretch the boundaries of what creative, what you can do with a creative mind. And I think that was a big step again, especially in Venice at the Biennale,
Yeah.
to be there. I think everything that happened in a year, I think everything that happened to me in music, in most of my life, that I struggled for and I worked so hard for it, and it was a real uphill battle. All of that happened times three within the world of art, in less than a year. So I'm just sitting here
Yeah.
and I'm now just like, yeah, people are like
Super
coming to
exciting.
me.
You're using the music kind of foundations, if you will, you can see you've already established yourself as a influential creator within that field. And so you're coming already with kind of that sort of reputation, that charisma, that kind of acceptance, and you're just showing people that you have a different creative outlet that you can pursue, which is really what's that's kind of what we've been working on with Hexiverse, which is the third collaboration with Sotheby's and the first with K11, our fantastic partners both in Hong Kong and Shanghai. So maybe we can discuss about that, the main event of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I guess
What's the
it's
inspiration? Let's say what's the inspiration first, and I want to get into the metaverse a little bit afterwards. But how do you see this kind of within your artistic career? Where does this kind of fall within, with what you've done, with what you're going to do?
I think, a lot of this, when the word NFT comes in, or metaverse, a lot of people are scared, right? They're like, it's like when my mom.
Especially
Sorry.
recently, I think especially recently, I would
Yeah.
say, because there's a lot of kind of skepticism and criticism around NFTs because of the obvious, money grab scam stories that have flooded the headlines. But
Yeah.
quietly behind the
Open
scenes,
dumps.
there's a lot of very interesting things that are happening, such as this project. So, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, honestly, I could have, if I was in it for that, I could have made so many different choices, because you get asked to join so many different projects every
Absolutely.
day that are more financially driven. For me, it's more about, I want to pose questions. I want to, I guess, just tingle your tangle, and just kind of um, bring certain points forward that, I guess, in some cases, take away the fear, um, and make things a little bit more discussable. That's kind of what the inspiration was for this, because I think when people hear the word NFT, they're thinking about things that scare them. I think that's still 99% of the world. And then there's pioneers out there. And people are trying to understand, they want to understand, but they also think there's a sort of an antisocial aspect to it, especially the metaverse. It does this mean we're all going to sit inside, have like VR glasses on, we're sitting there with our within our own world, and we're just speaking to each other digitally? What actually is a metaverse? Are there multiple metaverses? Is there a multiverse? All of this, the answer is yes. There is no one metaverse. And also, is Meta, Facebook, are they going to be creating the metaverse? Is that what's going to happen now? Are they basically going to gather all of our data? Is that all going to happen again? I think there's a counter movement that's coming up, where all of us
Yep.
artists are coming together. We want to make sure that the voice goes back to the people, and that we regain power, and we remain owner of our data. We don't want to live in a digital world where there's no more social contact in real life. So to me, it was like, the metaverse doesn't have to be something antisocial, right? You can actually place it in the real world. So I wanted to create a door to the metaverse in the real world, where people can actually come together and maybe discuss, what is out there, what is next. And I don't think one has to exclude the other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a perfect, because it's not just skepticism, it's just lack of understanding. And I think that's quite beautiful that people kind of get scared of the metaverse and NFTs, because there's just so much still to develop, uncover, challenge, learn. And I think this is a beautiful kind of culminating sculpture, if you will, or diptych, that asks some very interesting questions about, it is bringing together a communication, a conversation space within the physical world around this physical object representing a pathway into the digital. And I think it's a perfect summation of kind of the what everyone has been discussing, in a very elegant and unique way, specific to your kind of style, and that's kind of what's gonna shine through. Is like just it's gonna be very exciting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm same here. I think it's always very important for me to have my own signature on it. I think people know whenever it comes to physical design, audio design, or any of these things, even creating fashion, all of it has my very clear signature on it. I think that's the main thing when I start about thinking something creatively. But then I also like to have that part where it questions something and also takes away questions, I guess. But I think for me, I fear all of this. It's not, people look at me as an expert. They're like
Right.
asking me, like everyone around me, all artists, whether it's like famous athletes, famous pop artists, famous people from the art industry, they all flock to me because they kind of see me as sort of an entity when it comes to NFT and arts and the blockchain. And I'm
Because you've
like,
had great
I,
success, but I think you've approached it in a very meaningful way from an artistic point of view, and I think that's what kind of differentiates you from a lot of of the artists that have either made a name for themselves or are in fact on the downhill at this point, just given what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
I think for
definitely
some
see
approach,
you approaching it in a very different way than a lot of other artists. And there is thought, there is process behind each work that you put out. It's a very limited number of works that you actually release to the public, that you claim to be, your own thought. And for me, that practice is quite parallel to a traditional artist operating in the art world, the physical art world. And I think, having that curation, having that limited quantity, there is some things positive to learn from the art world, from the success of the art world, from the
yeah,
success of artists, and other things to rebel against. And I think this one you kind of navigated quite beautifully. Whereas the PFP projects or the artists that have attached themselves to larger projects, it's for better or for worse. It's just a different direction, and I kind of like that you've you could end up doing that in the future, and who knows? And I'm sure it'll be a great success. I'm not closing any doors there, but I just think that the way that you've approached it, because of the medium, it can allow you to be able to access a huge audience, but your music already does that to an effect. And so this output is quite intimate, quite limited. And I think that that's
yeah.
quite interesting how you've chosen.
No, you're right. Like that's a great observation. For me, it's I've worked. This is not something. It's not a hype for me. This is something. Whatever
Right.
NFT is, whatever the blockchain or Web3 will bring in the future. To me, this is something I've worked towards my whole life. So it's much more than just, oh, you got to do. People are stressing me like, why are you not doing more? Like, when's your next project? What's coming next? I'm like, just like making regular traditional arts. I'm taking my time. I want to make sure it has a message, it comes from me, it has my signature, and creating things that are aspirational or actually have my signature on it. It takes a lot of time, as does this
Absolutely.
specific piece for K11 and Sotheby's. It takes a lot of time and thoughts, and just putting stuff out there for the sake of it doesn't work for me. And as I was saying, I think all this stuff scares me as well. I have no idea what's coming next, and I don't have the answers. When people ask me, I can give them advice, but I'm like, well, it's fine to ask questions. It's fine to ask. There's no stupid question. There's only questions when it comes to this space, and I think we're all still discovering. And I'm here. I'm not an NFT artist. I just I make stuff. I
You're a
make.
futurist. You're a futurist that has a perfectionist persona, I would say, because I mean that it's one of the difficult things of your practice, because everything has to work perfectly together. We've worked
Yeah,
together now on a few different projects. Every little thing has to have a purpose, has to be beautifully integrated to create that whole final message. And and each of that thought process can really shine through with the work. So
I am my
that's
worst own. I am my own worst
yeah,
enemy
you're
sometimes.
absolutely your worst
Yeah,
own critic.
I'm
Absolutely.
like, yeah, some of my friends have like literally like, Don, your approach is sometimes you're too hard on yourself. But I
Right.
think that's also what art is. There is no people ask me advice to jump into this or to make a quick buck. I'm like, there is no shortcut. It's like dieting. You have to do the work, right? It's something you work. There's no quick fix. There's something you might be able to do it, but it will haunt you and it will come back and it will get you. And I think there is, in that sense, it's still in a traditional world. You still have to put in the work. You still have to have the inspiration. You have to still have sort of the reputation, and it's something you have to build towards to with credibility and mindfulness and a lot of perseverance and energy. And I think that's something that will never change. I think people perceive this as there being a shortcut, like, oh, I can now get into this game and just, jump into the water with no preparation, but you will drown. You will drown. Maybe not
Absolutely.
immediately,
And it's happening
but
right
in the
now.
years
It's
to
happening
come.
right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely. What we're
exactly.
seeing right now with everything in the market, whatnot, the real stability is going to come from artists such as yourself that are approaching it in a very different way. And that's what's really great to see. So we got to wrap up shortly, but I wanted to ask, as a viewer, is there any sort of specific, feeling message that you want people to capture? Obviously, everyone has their own interpretation, but while standing in front of one of the Hexaverse doorways.
I remember with my last reveal of my last piece, I actually got COVID. So I had to
Yes,
stay home. So I
I
wasn't there.
remember.
And I actually didn't mind so much because I generally, I think like art, whether it's in whatever shape or form, it has to be something that you um you experience and you interact with. And I have my own thoughts, I have my own message, but I think for me it's really about what you feel when you're there.
Yeah,
And this is might all sometimes I write a song and it will be about something completely different than it's intended for, but people would interpret it in a certain way where it would give them strength in a completely different situation. I'm like, I never saw it that way. I
I
think
see you
here it's the same
absolutely.
story. I think here
Uh,
it's, to me, I can give you a million reasons, a million answers, but I want to
leads
speak
the
for
viewer.
itself. Yeah,
Good. Good answer. Good answer. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Don. It's been a pleasure as always speaking with you. And of course, thank you, K11, for having us today. For more on
absolutely.
K11 Conversations and topics of creativity, culture, and innovation, follow K11 Musea's social channels for the latest updates. Don, do you want to say anything to finish it off?
I just want to give a big shout out to you, first of all, for being there, for being a visionary, being with me on this journey. Appreciation is beyond. And also K11, for this it's been quite a project. And for believing in me, believing in you, and doing this, bringing this out into the public. It's been a crazy adventure so far. Um, Very, very excited when it got revealed. Very excited for all the reactions so far. Yeah, and hopefully it's one of many to come.
Perfect. Thank you, Don.
See you in the metaverse, my friend.
See you in the metaverse.